Good evening. Hello and welcome to this Monday's edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Nayantara Rai coming to you from our debate center in Mumbai. Today, India got its 47th Chief Justice of India in Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde, who has succeeded Justice Ranjan Gogoi. The oath ceremony, as is the practice, was administered by the President at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. If you look at the tenure of the CJI in the Supreme Court, it has witnessed some of the most controversial moments in the history of the judiciary. For example, that unprecedented January 2018 press conference, it was properly now being called by the 4 rebel judges. They were his colleagues. Then you also have the recent case of the sexual harassment charges against his predecessor. The new Chief Justice of India has never spoken out on any of these controversies, even though he was part of the 3-judge panel that gave a clean chit to Justice Gogoi. A tenure of around 17 months lies ahead for the new Chief Justice of India, who will be retiring on 23rd April 2021. He says his biggest priority is to ensure justice is delivered on time. How is he going to do that? How will he fast-track the pending cases? He's already spoken about adopting technology for doing that. I'm going to be discussing that and a lot more with my panel today, which comprises Justice A.K. Sikri, the former judge at the Supreme Court of India, Sanjay Hegde, the senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, as well as Dr. Arghya Sen Gupta, the research director at Vidhi Center for Legal Policy. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Monday's edition of the India Development Debate. But Justice Sikri, if I could come to you first. The new Chief Justice of India has made it clear his biggest challenge is going to be to ensure that justice is delivered on time. You know, time after time, I'm sure has been the biggest priority for every Chief Justice of India. How can the new one achieve it? He's starting off his innings by talking about artificial intelligence, talking about adopting a new mechanism which could give way to paper for technology.
You see, what I feel, as you have very rightly pointed out, delivering the justice on time has been the priority of all the Chief Justices. Whosoever comes as Chief Justice, and I think as far as my memory goes, every Chief Justice announces it, that I will ensure and I will take all adequate steps which would be in place or should be in place to ensure that the timely justice is delivered. And this, in a sense, talks of judicial reforms. It is not very easy to achieve, I may say, at the outset, and so many things are required. But before that, let us first see what is the meaning of judicial reforms. Whenever we say justice, inexpensive and speedy justice, we always think of more than 3 crore cases which are pending in this country. And how to cope with these arrears, and new cases are also filed, how to tackle those new cases as well, and what should be the proper mechanism to do that. And in the whole process, always there is a discussion about the judicial reforms. Once we talk of judicial reforms, what I would say is that it is not only the cases, decision of these cases in a time-bound manner, which is important. Yes, to deliver quick and inexpensive justice, which every Chief Justice talks about. Before that, to allow access to justice to every person in the country, even marginalized section of the society, that is very important. And when we talk of justice, it is not only deciding or disposal of the cases. It has to be the outcome of the cases has to result in a fair and equitable outcome, which is justice delivered in accordance with law to the parties, and parties are satisfied. And in order to achieve that, that means we want ultimately quality judgments and quality justice being rendered by the judges who are appointed. And what it entails, and apart from that, let me say one thing more here, and I'm only flagging the issues, and the 2 other very prominent and experienced panelists will also discuss on that. and this is one which is the deciding of cases, etc. I have always held and felt that what is the role of the judge in a democracy which is governed by the constitution. I say the first role is, apart from deciding these cases, and in the process of deciding those cases, the first role is to uphold the rule of law and the constitution. And the second role, particularly of the High Court judges and Supreme Court judges, is to bridge the gap between the law and the society. Because that is where the entire rule of law in a democratic setup would prevail, and which would be the satisfaction of the majority of the people. And therefore, this also entails another aspect and the features, that the judiciary has to be fearless and judiciary has to be impartial. And when we see that this is the main objective of any judicial system in any democratic country, the first thing which comes is the about the judges, that is appointment of judges, how they have to be appointed, what are the norms for appointment of good judges, then there should be sufficient number of judges to tackle these kinds of cases, then training of these judges as well, so that they are able to achieve the aim and what I have now described. That is, and just I'll take 1 second in just flagging the other issues so that other can then take on from that. Then the question would come how to cope up with the areas, and here artificial intelligence, case management, court management, how it has to be done in a scientific manner, that comes into picture. Third is that even when there are so many cases which we are pending, and the 3 crore cases in the entire country can't be wiped off in a year or 2 years time, but what kind of cases which are to be given priority? Because there are many cases which lag behind, many cases which are decided early, and therefore there is some kind of resentment in the society at times. So that has to be seen. And
one by one,
in the entire process, in deciding, then we need transparency as well.
So let's take all of these.
In the judicial system, because the people should have trust in that.
So you set the stage, and with that opening argument of yours, and put the ball squarely in the court of Sanjay Hegde as well as Orgo Sengupta. Orgo, I'll come to you now. You've just heard what Justice Sikri's had to say. Fair transparency, I think, should be obvious. The fact that we have to keep reiterating the judiciary must be fair and transparency, I think itself tells you the story of how it exactly is. I know you have very strong views also when it comes to how the judiciary must stay independent, must not be influenced, and on tackling just delays as well. What can be the 2 or 3 revolutionary measures that can be adopted by the new CGI to ensure that there is timely justice, because justice delayed is also justice denied?
Yeah, Nayantara, I think Justice Sikri has set the stage beautifully, and I think it's imperative for us all to realize that Justice Bobde, when he takes over as Chief Justice, as he has done today, is not an opening batsman in a test match. We are actually well into the middle order. He is the 47th Chief Justice of India, and as Justice Sikri pointed out, every Chief Justice has come in and said that they want delays to be reduced, and that's a very noble goal. But I think the way to reduce it systemically is for Chief Justice Bobde and future Chief Justices to come up with a plan that outlives their tenure. So I would suggest that a 10-year plan be adopted by the Chief Justice under the aegis of the Supreme Court of India, with the input and guidance of retired judges like Justice Sikri as well as judges of the High Court, which looks at the problem of judicial delays as a problem that's not simply limited to some low-hanging fruit during a particular Chief Justice's tenure. As Justice Sikri rightly pointed out, we have about 3 crore cases that are pending in our courts. This will not get resolved in a period of 1.5 years or 5 years. We need at the minimum a 10-year plan at 3 levels: at the level of the Supreme Court, at the level of the High Courts, and at the level of the subordinate judiciary. So the first thing that I think needs to be done is that there needs to be a 10-year plan, because we have to realize that this is not a T20 game, this is a test match, and we are well into the middle order. That's number one. Number two, as far as the question of transparency is concerned, I have been I have been delighted by the fact that Justice Bobde has been very frank and open ever since his appointment was announced and has given very candid television interviews. I think it augurs very well for the institution that judges are prepared to be transparent and walk the talk on transparency. This has been supplemented by the excellent judgment given by the Supreme Court in the last week of Justice Gogoi's tenure as Chief Justice, saying that the office of the Chief Justice of India should be transparent. And so which basically means that the Supreme Court is prepared to walk the talk on transparency. I hope that this will mean that at least in Chief Justice Bobde's tenure, we can get through an entire tenure of a Chief Justice without an appointments crisis. I know I am setting the bar quite low, but that's because of the fact that at least in the tenure of the last 2 to 3 Chief Justices, there have been one crisis or another in relation to judicial appointments. I do hope that a certain calmness prevails and the temperature relating to judicial appointments reduces. That's the second point. Third, very quickly on technology, Justice Bobde has spoken about artificial intelligence and the need for artificial intelligence in order to expedite our processes. I think it's very encouraging that the Supreme Court is talking about the need for artificial intelligence, but it's not just artificial intelligence that's needed. What we essentially need is to look at the nuts and bolts of the system to see where processes can be automated. So if I were to take a very simple example, filing defects is a common thing that every lawyer knows, that there are all kinds of registry objections and defects on filing. We need to make sure that these processes are automated so that they run quicker, so that the nuts and bolts of the system run quicker. And I think Justice Bobde, by saying that there will be changes of this kind in the system, has really started by playing on the front foot, and I hope that he remains on the front foot and doesn't have to go on to the back foot during the course of his tenure. I'm confident that he won't have to.
Loving your cricket analogies here, from one cricket fan to another, Argo, but let me go across to Sanjay Hegde there, who's saying that how the new Chief Justice of India is a middle order batsman, and to stay on the front foot has to adopt technology, and has given a whole host of suggestions. One of them being, Sanjay Hegde, a 10-year plan. The corollary of that will be that it will take at least 10 years to ensure that we tackle this entire problem of delay, and at a time also when the government is the largest litigator, and you have seen crisis after appointments go. Do you agree with Argo that there has to be a long-term, 10-year-long type plan to tackle all of this, and therefore we, civil society, journalists, professionals, nobody should get excited believing that there is going to be no short-term solution?
A 10-year plan in terms of personnel is a good suggestion. In fact, I had once told one of the persons who did not become Chief Justice that I thought there should be a collegium of prospective Chief Justices. That is, right now we know that what the succession to the Supreme Court is till possibly the year 2024. So the the Chief Justice, a visionary Chief Justice, could well hand it to all routine administration to the youngest in the group of Supreme Court judges, who would in turn, by virtue of seniority, be a likely Chief Justice. So therefore, the court could be administered by one person for a much longer period than the tenure of any one particular Chief Justice, whether it be a few months or a year or two. You would thus achieve some measure of institutional continuity. But that would require agreement among the brethren themselves. And we somehow have this tendency of deifying the captaincy, even if it is occupied only for a few days. I think that the court has to talk within itself to say that the institution is bigger than any one individual captain. This is within the court. But as far as cutting down delays is concerned, you touched upon it when you said that the government is the biggest litigant. And why is it that the government is the biggest litigant? Simply because most government officers are afraid that if they do not take through all the tiers of the appeal, that's from the court of first instance to the High Court to the Supreme Court, some auditor later in the day will blame them, saying that there was an
Sanjay
appeal.
Hegde, that is a
still
new
possible,
phenomenon.
You did not
Justice
attempt it.
But Sanjay Hegde, that seems to be a new phenomenon. Even if you were to talk about policy paralysis or all of that, it goes back only to the UPA time. I'm not sure the fear existed all through when the government has been a litigator, or whether the problem could also be the right arm doesn't talk to the left arm, and all that we see. We have seen promises from the government that it's going to reduce litigation.
No, I don't think it's a UPA NDA business. It's
You think it
the
existed
process
forever?
of not taking decisions has only got firmer over the years, and that is also possibly because the judiciary itself has been taking on more and more roles, saying that the bureaucracy is paralyzed,
Okay, I'm
and
seeing
that unless
Justice
they
Sikri
step in to
raise
fill
his
the
hand.
vacuum, nothing happens.
I'm seeing Justice Sikri raise his hand, so I'm going to allow him to
Yes,
come in. I think
I have to
let-
defer to him.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, let me add here what Agras said, and about 10 years plan, which Sanjay also supported. Let me add something, and from my personal experience and working on that side. I have seen each Chief Justices coming, they come with all bona fides, they are all enthusiastic, they want to do something for the institution. Having said that, the problem is that every Chief Justice has his own plan. Whatever that particular Chief Justice thinks, okay, I will deal the problem in this particular manner. Like Justice Gogoi, if I remember it correctly, had said that, look, I would concentrate on appointment of judges. I will, in the district judiciary also, there are so many vacancies. I will ensure that by the time I retire, all the vacancies are filled. So therefore, his view was, when all the judges are appointed and they are in place, then we will be able to tackle. This is what I feel is, this is ad hoc approach of all Chief Justices. And here I agree with what both the speakers have said, 10 years plan, and in that 10 years plan, all the future Chief Justices, as Sanjay has said, they should be. I have also been saying, when I was part of Collegium also and part of Supreme Court as well, that look, let there be a committee, let there be a vision statement of in next 5 years or 10 years what the Supreme Court is going to achieve. And that should not be because we don't have in present system, no Chief Justice is going to be there for 4 years, 5 years or 10 years. It's impossible.
17 months.
So therefore, why not all future Chief Justices who are going to be, they sit together, make that plan, and so that there is a continuity. When even one Chief Justice retires, other Chief Justice takes over, and the plan is already in place. So therefore, 10 years plan is a good idea. With this kind of execution of that 10 years plan, we will have some continuity, we will have some objective plans before us which is to be executed. And as far as government litigation policy is concerned, let me say one thing here, and Sanjay has again said a very right thing. Government has been coming out with policy, litigation policy. And as per that litigation policy, where the appeal should not be filed, which cases, how the cases should be sorted out, etc., how they should be filtered. But I've seen, although these policies are made from time to time, as well when it comes to implementation, and it is hardly implemented. Appeals are filed recklessly up to the Supreme Court, and most of the appeals ultimately are dismissed as well. And I don't know, I have been saying, so say for example, in the case of taxation itself, if you file appeals in the cases and you are going to lose 95%, even if 5% cases you succeed, the revenue which you are generating in those 5% cases, I think the cost which is incurred in 100% cases outweighs the revenue.
In fact, if I could
what is the use of filing those cases?
In fact, I take your points, and I'm going to go back to Orgo. Your 10-year suggestion has gone down very well with the panelists. Let's see if we actually see something like that. And here you have Justice Sikri saying that, in fact, why should only one Chief Justice of India do it? It should be done in collaboration with the future Chief Justice of India, because the nominations and appointments are always on seniority. But Orgo, the other point I want to make, and I want to ask Sanjay Hegde also about this. It's all very well and good to talk about how we're going to adopt artificial intelligence and we're going to adopt technology to fast track cases, take care of all the problems with automation. let's get realistic. Look at the state of infrastructure in our trial courts. Go down to the smaller cities. You don't even have enough judges. How are you even going to reach this step? Look at the, I'm sorry to say, this is sorry state of affairs and the kind of infrastructure that we have in the lower courts. Isn't all of this and what we're talking about very far away, or even closer home when we're talking about timely delivery of justice? Why should in 2019 our courts be shut for long summer holidays? It's a colonial system, and even when the colonial system is still in existence, why aren't we actually seeing the justices using the summer holidays to deliver verdicts and to write the verdicts? That's also not taking place.
Okay, so I'm going to take these one by one very quickly. Firstly, I don't think artificial intelligence and building infrastructure are mutually exclusive goals. Both of them require money, and both are money that requires to be spent. So in a recent Vidhi report, we found that there are 100 district court complexes in the country where there is not even a single toilet for women. Of course, this needs to happen, and this needs to be built, and the Chief Justice of India must put pressure and use his moral authority to put pressure on High Court Chief Justices to make sure that at least the very basic of toilets for women in every court complex is provided for. But this, just because of the fact that we can't provide for toilets doesn't mean that we don't need technology. It's the same argument that, India has a GDP level that's poor, so we shouldn't be trying to go into space. I think that the two aren't mutually exclusive. So the fact is that technology, we must realize, is in aid of the same problem, because at the end of the day, it's quicker justice and more accessible justice for the litigant. Any litigant needs toilets, but any litigant also needs quicker justice. And if technology, to the simple degree that it can provide an app by which the litigant knows and does not have to depend on his or her lawyer to know in which court and at what time his or her case comes up, that's a use of technology that is in service of the litigant. And I don't think we need to think of artificial intelligence as some otherworldly thing that it's in a generation far away. I think both of these are equally critical. The second point, I think, is that I really think we need to stop this canard about holidays in the Supreme Court. I think the holidays in the Supreme Court are not that much, number one. Number two, these holidays are critical for judges to write their judgments. We need the Supreme Court to write high quality judgments. Judges in the Supreme Court genuinely don't have the time because of their caseload in order to take time out and write good judgments. So I do think that holidays is barking up the wrong tree. And finally, as far as the question of technology is concerned, we need to understand this basic point. Our report has shown that one of the biggest problems in district courts in the country is that there are no case display boards. Litigants don't know when their case is coming up. I think we need to think of technology bottom up in terms of the solutions that are brought in aid of the common man and woman who wants to access the court. And I think Justice Bobde is right in thinking about some radical solutions, but as Justice Sikri rightly said, as in this, there needs to be continuity. And continuing my cricketing analogy, as in we need to build partnerships so that we can take this a long way, because ultimately it does take two batsmen at two different ends.
Okay, I take your point, but even your batsmen don't, and they're very busy, and I'll draw that analogy. They get, if you look at the Supreme Court in 2018, there were a 45-day break for summer, 15-day break for winter. You had 1 week of vacation for Holi and 5 days for Dussehra as well as Diwali. I want to know how many judgments were also written, but now that we do have transparency in RTI, let's see if we can get access to that. Sanjay Hegde, if I could come to you, fantastic suggestions that we have seen from Orgo as well about a bottom-up approach, the sheer wastage of time that takes place. I do hope we'll also see some maybe some penalty that's also paid when lawyers don't show up, when there is just wastage of everyone's time, when cases are just dragged on, useless adjournments. We keep talking about that. Do you really believe that we can find a solution for that in the short term?
Well, those solutions cannot come overnight, and those solutions will also come in a culture where there is greater compliance with the law, and that has to start from the government first. Right now, it does appear to me that we are a country of lawyers, but not too much a
But
country
Sanjay,
where
again,
there
why
is
does
an
that direction
innate
have to come
respect
from the
of law.
government? Shouldn't that
For the
direction
law.
come?
Just let,
Yeah.
just let me complete that point. The point is that you don't need to take every matter and every stage of the matter to the judge. The judge should come in only when there is an issue of fact or law which has been boiled down for his analysis, and he decides that point of fact or law, and then the case moves forward. Unfortunately, we tend to first put in a paper into court and then wait for it to process all the way through. If you see how things are done abroad, most of the depositions also happen outside court. They happen in the attorney's office. Transcripts come out. When everything is finally in shape, a date is fixed for arguments, and that there is never a continuance. We need to figure how to get more and more processes, the legal process of courts, out of court time, out of public time, which court's public hearing time, which is a very valuable non-renewable commodity. I have seen so many criminal matters just wait their turn and then get disposed of on a short point, and that short point could have possibly been argued out in writing, a kind of paraphrase be ready for both sides. You could have then a 2-minute or a 5-minute argument and finish off.
But Orgo, tell me something.
We
What
unfortunately,
Sanjay Hegde has
tend
just
to
said. The sheer
believe
waste.
almost in reincarnation, and our processes go on and on.
In fact, the very valid point that Sanjay Hegde has just made, that you wait in court and, just on one point, the case is dismissed. Orgo, you've talked about adoption of technology, so very, very quickly, because we're running out of time. Anywhere in the world where you can make
Case
online
management
submissions
is what I
to
was
saying
telling
that you
about.
should actually maybe not have the hearing tomorrow or day after, that one of the sides needs more time, and you submit that in online, and therefore it is part of the official records and a new time is arrived at. Does that happen anywhere else in the world?
Actually, in many developed countries, we move to completely online submissions. I think the Supreme Court has already taken great steps towards making our courts e-courts. At least at this point of time, the first steps have been taken. And I think it's only a matter of time before this happens. So I think we just need to push in that direction, because although we talk a lot about paperless courts, I think there is a tremendous wastage of paper that goes on, certainly in any court of law. So I think online submissions, very excellent suggestion, Nayantara. I think that we do need to take it. And number two is that, just coming back to the point about the government, I think yes, as Justice Sikri rightly said, the government is the largest litigant and has all kinds of policies to reduce its litigation, but it doesn't happen. I think it's incumbent at least upon the Supreme Court to use its jurisdiction under Article 136, that is to grant special leave, much more cautiously. It's about 88% of its docket now is special leave petitions, which are discretionary, at least insofar as appeals special leave that is by the government is concerned. I think the Supreme Court perhaps can move more cautiously so that it disincentivizes these routine appeals from being filed by the government.
Hegde, I am running out of time. I've got 90 seconds left, and I'm going to give you the final comments. Something I wanted to touch upon during this discussion too. Fantastic suggestions that we got for the new CGI. But just looking at the new CGI, who I believe also likes photography and motorbikes, having said that, the very fact that his tenure at the Supreme Court has been marred by some of the biggest controversies. He's never spoken out against that, whether it is his colleagues who took to that press conference or the sexual harassment case against his predecessor, and he was part of the panel that went into the recommendations and what they had to say. Any larger message that comes from that on how the CGI, the new CGI, dealt with those kind of crises?
Well, the CJI has shown that he is a man of the institution. He will speak when he needs to speak, and otherwise he will not. He did need to make a point about transparency that he wants in his system, and that's why he probably at the beginning of his tenure has given those television interviews. But as you said, he is a man of the motorbike and the camera. Both of them depend largely on the timing and the exposure. So I think that will guide him.
I've really thoroughly enjoyed the puns that I've got today, whether it's to do with cricketing or we just heard from exposure from Sanjay Hegde. I'd like to thank all three of you gentlemen, Justice Sikri, Sanjay Hegde as well as Orgo Sen Gupta, for taking the time out, for joining us here on India Development Debate. We've discussed ways and lots of ideas on how justice can be fast-tracked, because justice delayed is indeed justice denied. Many thanks for watching.